Playboy, and this is a Fort Worth Playboy morning show. And we're going a little bit early this morning because we have time and we've got so much going on today, and we'll see where this thing lands. Everybody's kind of out of pocket. So wanted to get this on aired, get some questions answered if possible, and get it out and to you today. So it is Friday, May 30th, 31st. I'm sorry. Last day of the month. Tomorrow's first day of summer, and we're glad you're here. What do we talk about on the morning show? We talk about game, pickup, relationships, and sex. And when I say we, I mean me and my Playboy's Bunny, who is my partner on this show usually. And like yesterday morning, we reviewed a very long, sad, but stereotypical divorce of where a girl had kind of like decided to change her mind and not want to be married anymore and not want to take care of her kids, and all the things that's nightmare fuel for a married man happen. And we just kind of, the reason we showcased it was it's everything that a guy is afraid of actually did happen, because we usually are like, don't worry about the boogeyman. It's very rare. But in this case, everything happened. I mean, we were talking about like a homeschooled mom, and she met a felon, by chance while selling something on Facebook Marketplace. And within 30 days, she went from being a homeschooling fundamental Christian mom that had been married for 13 years to living with a convicted felon and losing contact with her kids, and then she eventually ended up in jail. So it's an interesting story, and we broke it down. It took us about an hour. It might be interesting to watch or piece together. And we fall under the red pill, which is an umbrella term that covers game, men's rights activists, MGTOW, anything that has to do with intersexual dynamics. And what I always say is the red pill is strategic, and game, which is learn charisma, nothing more and nothing less, is very tactical. So it is on the ground skills that you can learn to move girls from complete strangers to in your bed and repeat customers, to all the way to reigniting passion in a 20 or 30-year marriage, which is what Buddy's really good at. So that's what we do. That's what we did yesterday, and that's what we will do tomorrow. But this morning, we always start with a maxim, kind of foundational mindset through Chateau. And today's maxim is number 59. The less it looks like you're trying, the harder the girl will try to figure you out. And again, in the vast majority of guys who aren't going to approach women at all anyway, and that's okay. But those that do tend to be overly, because they're attracted to her and they're not sure what to do, they are overly active. They are too nice, too effusive, too complimentary, too everything, too energetic, all of it. And because it might be his only sexual outlet possibility of that year, he's going to be kind of wired. So what do you do to set yourself apart? Because the catchphrase, and you should always keep it in the back of your mind, is girls do not like guys that like them. They prefer, and studies have shown this, that women are more attracted to men who they're not sure of what his feelings for her are. That's what they like. They like a high value man that they're not sure what he thinks of her. And one of the ways to remain a little bit, for lack of a better word, mysterious or inscrutable or hard to read is putting out a little less effort than she's used to. The less it looks like you're trying, you're going through the world, she happened to be within your proximity, you started a conversation, and you may be gone very quickly, onto something more interesting. But having that abundance mindset that if this one fails, that's okay. Girls are like buses. There's another one coming along every 10 minutes. You'll do better than thinking this is the only girl I might have a conversation with today and I got to make this work or it's a failure. The harder the girl will try to figure you out. And this is where it comes down to the fundamentals. And what I always try to convey to especially new guys and a lot of intermediates, we have to kind of like be reminded of this is that when it comes to game, less is more. Little less energy, a little less texting, use fewer words, have her talk more than you do, which means asking good questions. Do a little bit less, move a little bit slower gestures. Don't be frantic because that tends to show, a higher output of energy and nervousness. And if you can consciously slow yourself down, even your cadence and the manner that you speak, you won't go too slow. You'll hit it just right. And that's what I've seen with guys that I've recommended this because I feel like they're like overwhelming the girls, which is easy to do. You got to remember, guys are big and you got a lot of energy and it can be scary at times for these girls, is that you slow things, just consciously knock it back by about 20%. And you're probably going to hit it just right where you become more attractive. And again, attraction even starts with like posture, with your mannerisms, with how you carry yourself, how you walk, how you talk. And all of this adds up. It's not just what you say, it's how you're saying it. And the best way that you can improve your presentation for is to slow it down just slightly. A small percentage, that 20% dialing it back will give you a lot of leeway. And like I said, most guys, when I ask them to slow things down, a little less is more when it comes to game, they seem to hit it just right. So that's especially us. We tend to like lay layer upon layer, and always the risk is that you overgame a girl and blow her out, and you don't have to worry about that when you work with less is more. Again, even with texting, like how we say text like an alpha, you leave it a little bit less plain. You don't use any capitalization, no punctuation, short, let her talk. Again, the less it looks like you're trying, the harder the girl will try to figure you out. And the only balance here, the only negative here that you should be aware of is some of these girls, because they've been ran through, because of their vast quantities of dick that they've rode, guys that they've choded, just they ruin. They're kind of like, they're damaged. And they will attempt to care less or to show less because they talk about it like being a competition. That they care less, even less than you. And then it becomes a circling the drain. Go ahead and cut those girls loose. Just, block them, ghost them, get rid of their number, get rid of their contact, because that's not anyone you want to spend any time with, because you want to invest your time in yes women. The maybes and the no's, you do this focused long enough, and it doesn't take long at all, a few weeks, you'll have more yes girls than you know what to do with. But again, sometimes you'll come across damaged women who have been on the market too long, have had too many bad experiences, and they won't react properly because damaged women don't react to game well. And it's one of the indicators that they're damaged is they don't react to game well. Usually when you pull back with a girl a little bit, just a little bit, she'll tend to chase you. It's very subtle, but you'll see that you'll get better results. Again, when it comes to game, fundamentally, less is more. Chateau Hartis Maxim number 59. The less it looks like you're trying, the harder the girl will try to figure you out. Don't be an open book. Remain a little mysterious. Tease her, treat her like a kid, treat her like a teenager. Nothing she says is serious or should be construed as fact. The more you mess with them, the better they'll react. And that's the real deal. Let's go to the next, see what else we have. So the double standard exists. And this is one that it's funny because themes kind of change over time. And this is something that used to come up like a couple years ago a lot on Twitter, especially when it was much more sexualized, was the double standard exists. Men who pound 1,000 pussies value increases with each snatch he hammers. The girl who spreads her legs for 1,000 cocks value decreases with each dick drilling. This is the law of the sexual marketplace. I don't make the rules. Again, quite often when we're conveying, in some manner that a man who has had sex with a lot of women is high value, and a woman who has had a sex with a lot of men is low value, women will say, well, guys do it, or why aren't the same standards? Because it really does come down to a double standard. And a lot of guys use the lock analogy where, a lock that any key can open is a worthless lock. And that's a good point, is that for a girl to take all comers, it lowers her value. And girls tend to recognize that early on. Because you'll even talk to girls that are younger that are like, they have little rules in their head, and these are actually pretty smart, to keep the number of men that they're having sex with somewhat low. Again, what I try to convey in as many words as possible, girls have more sex with more men than it's much more common once you kind of get them talking, and you're the other guy quite often, and you're in this world, you become very aware that this, where like they say like 7 is the average that a girl has been with, or 7 men, and you realize that number is like blown out like before they get out of high school, when you really look at their pure numbers, because so many guys don't count. They'll always say 3. They'll say my high school boyfriend, my college boyfriend, and my first husband, or my first serious boyfriend. But the double standard does exist. So that's you have to lock that down, that the man who pounds 1,000 pussies, the man who has a lot of action, his sexual marketplace value is going to increase. Because again, it's 3 things define an alpha: how many women are attracted to him, the quality of the women that are attracted to him, and how strong is that attraction to him. Those are the 3 qualifiers for what is alpha in the sexual marketplace. Again, it has nothing to do with his money. It has nothing to do with his car that he drives, or his accomplishments, or his bravery or lack of. It comes down to how many women, what quality the women are, and how strong is that attraction to him. And as that increases, his value increases. And you can't argue with it. It's like people buying something. You can't argue with the marketplace because they're going to buy it. So the girl who spreads her legs for 1,000 cocks, every guy that she's with lowers her value to most men. Again, these are very much generalizations, because there's, I don't know if there's many women. There's women that will always go, oh, if he's been with a bunch of women, he's ran through and all this other stuff. But generally, women, when they get around a high value man who's been with a lot of women, she becomes excited. She can't really help herself. It's really unconscious. And that's one of the reasons that I think with women, they hide it to the very best of their ability, is just like they know that should a guy get a whiff, an inclination, a suspicion that she's been with a lot of men, his attraction for her lowers. Just naturally. And this is all, the averages, because there's always group and there's always people that have kind of aged out of this. So there's a number of reasons that this may not apply as stringently, but generally under 40 and people looking for their first husband or wife, these are the rules. Things kind of change over time with more experience. But again, the double standard does exist. This guy will be conveyed as high value. This is one of the most popular pictures I've ever put up too. Sometimes I have a good morning picture. I try to put something up about men, masculinity, what we do, adventure. And this is one of the most popular ones, I guess, because you just don't see it. And he's not identifiable. I'm not sure who he is, but there you go. That's where you want to be. Lots of girls, and they go, oh, I wouldn't want to have to manage that many women. Actually, managing 3 to 5 is easier than managing one, because they'll tend to take care of the management themselves. Let me see what questions. If you have a question for me, something that I might be able to answer, be it game, pickup, relationships, sex, put it in the comments box on YouTube, and I will do my absolute best to get it answered this morning during the broadcast. Brick City mentions, before sex, perhaps it's acceptable to chase a bit more, but still no need to be a pushover. He is correct. And I need to define that. Chasing, pursuing. Before sex happens, and I mean like happens 3 or 4 times, you kind of get her locked in on your dick. There's a before sex and after sex in relationships. Before sex, you, the man, most of the time, you are going to have to make pretty much everything happen. You're going to have to approach her. You're going to have to gain her interest. You're going to have to ask her out. You're going to have a plan. You're going to have to plug her into that plan. You're going to have to move her from stranger in your bed for fires. And you're going to have to make it happen. You're going to have to ask her out. You're going to have to meet her at a certain place. You're going to have to engage her. And I always say entertain her, because girls are usually bored to death of most men. And you're going to have to physically escalate and get her into bed. Once you've got her into bed 3 or 4 times, because again, women cannot take any responsibility whatsoever for sex happening. It all has to be a situation where she was innocently in your apartment and it just happened. She has to have a story to tell her friends where she was an innocent bystander and then all of a sudden your dick was inside her. It was just something that happened, and it was just, could happen to anybody. And that's the story she has to have in the beginning. Then after you've had sex a couple times within that first week, she becomes a little bit more locked in, and you'll see in the subsequent couple of weeks, she'll tend to chase you. That's when the momentum changes. Before sex, all the cards are in her hand. And then after sex, the momentum and who kind of carries the weight of the relationship changes. And you'll see that over time, because before, she's looking for a reason to not fuck you. Once you guys start fucking, she has to rationalize her decision. She has anything you do after that, she'll rationalize in your favor. Before, she'll knock it out. She'll like cut you off. She'll ghost. She'll go out with another guy. She'll do something. She'll go out with an ex. She'll flake. But after, she has to justify that she slept with you. And so then everything you do tends to fall into the why did I sleep with this guy? This is a good thing category, So that's the real deal. And he does have a good point. Before, you have to take most of the action while not being a pushover, remaining mysterious, keeping some of your cards, hidden, and she'll be more attracted to you. But that's a good point from Brick City, that it's acceptable to chase because you have to. You have to make things happen. These guys that like get all bent out of shape because like girls won't chase them, it's not going to happen. The exceptions prove the rule. Every once in a while, you'll have a guy jump in that some girl approached him and banged him at a party, but it's an exception. The vast majority of men will have to approach the woman first and get things going. Even if she's simply there to be approached by him, he'll still have to take action and make it happen. And then over time, she'll start picking up more of the momentum. Next tweet. It's a fear that a lot of men have. And like Bunny and I say, I've never seen so many overweight brides, and I never thought I would, because generally those pictures that they take last forever. Like if you go to your parents' house, your mom probably might even have wedding pictures of her parents or her grandparents and her wedding pictures. Again, those pictures on that day are forever. And that's why women tend to try to get in the very best shape. And it may be the last time they're in shape in their life for their wedding. And then nowadays you actually see brides that are out of shape and overweight, and you're like, well, where are they going to go? I mean, you're going to gain weight a little bit, somewhat in theory, with every child. So, and studies have backed this up. The younger the guy, the slimmer or the closer to underweight they want. We're talking about like being studied, women to be that they'll commit to. They want younger, slimmer women. And they think that it's hardwired, that knowing with each subsequent pregnancy that there'll be a slight, and when I say slight, I mean like 2 to 5 pounds of weight gain. But again, if you take a petite girl and add 15 pounds after 3 kids, that's significant. 15 pounds on a girl under 130 pounds is significant. But marriage does a body bad. Newly married women in their teens and early 20s packed on 24 pounds in 5 years. Newly married men, see, this isn't any better, gained 30 pounds. And I put a link in there. Let's see if it goes to the entry into romantic partnership is associated with obesity. You have to actively resist this stuff. That's why I have that one tweet that says, if she's 25 and she does not have a healthy eating and exercise or fitness routine established, you're in for a bad time. The older you get, the further you get away from your early 20s, late teens, and don't have that fitness habit established, the much, much, much more difficult it will be, because life gets in the way. Pregnancies get in the way, complications, and you're actually unhealthier, which makes more obstacles for you to overcome to lose the weight. So when you're looking, let's say ideal, looking for something long-term, looking for the mother of your children, you want to skew slightly slimmer than you normally would, and definitely not the average American, which is 170 pounds anymore. That's a female, by the way. 5'4", 170 pounds, which is basically a circle. You're looking for like 5'4" and 110 to 120 pounds, which is, ideal, because there's going to be naturally just a little bit with each subsequent pregnancy, probably 2 to 3 pounds. Again, people get, and I wish Bunny were here to add to this, because she's really good at talking about this, because she knows what these girls do, and they get happy and they gain happy weight, or they get sad and then they gain sad weight. But newly married women in their teens and 20s will pack on 24 pounds. That's a significant amount of weight for a woman under any circumstances. So just be aware of that. And again, having fitness habits established when you go into a relationship go a long way. One thing that I try to convey to guys too is, generally when we say women will pick up your habits, likes and dislikes, and hobbies and beliefs, the exception being healthy eating and exercise. So many women have a natural aversion to anything healthy or any type of physical exertion. What they say when they hook up with a guy that is fit is that's his thing. It'd be like you like flying planes and that's your hobby. She wouldn't be that interested in it. She'd say that's his thing. So do not depend on her picking up that habit from you if she doesn't have that habit. Generally, in time, if they don't have that habit by about 22, 25, it's going to become more ingrained that they don't do anything, which the vast majority of people, men and women, do nothing. So, you're an outlier looking for an outlier, but you'll have a higher quality of life and healthier children when you find that. But just know that marriage, if you're not aware of it, will do a body bad. You're going to gain weight. People are going to blimp up, happy weight. And we see it all the time. We even see it in the gym where, people that trained up for a wedding and then they come back and they tend to gain weight. And we had a couple where they got married just a few months ago and she already cut her hair short and has probably put on 10 pounds. So it's as stereotypical as anything else. So if you're interested in any of my products, you can find them at fortworthplayboy.gumroad.com. Right now, I'm really trying to take the dating world by storm. It's every book by Chateau Hartis, both the best of 1, 2, and 3, Chicks Dig Jerks, How to Be an Asshole Game, Dread Game. All the most powerful game books are within that category, and they're all for one flat price. So if you're interested, check out Take the Dating World by Storm at fortworthplayboy.gumroad.com. If you're interested today, it'll give you something to read over the weekend and get better. Let's see what else we have. Chris D asks, what do you think will happen in the next few decades with the large amount of guys checking out? More women for the guys willing to run game. The 80-20 has always kind of been there. 80% of guys are very well, it's beta and alpha. But the vast majority of men aren't that interested in the things that we're interested. They're interested in having a wife that doesn't outweigh him, that doesn't bitch at him constantly every time he walks in the door, that will pretty much leave him alone so he can go to work and pursue his hobbies, be it like radio controlled cars or hunting or, video games, whatever his hobbies are. That's the vast majority of men. A teeny tiny outlier group, which is us, is interested in women, attraction, seduction, lots of sex, lots of variety, moving and understanding women's mindset. It's infinitesimally small. And it's like I always try to tell people, if you work out, you think everybody works out, when in fact, far less than 1% of the population exercises regularly. And if you're not believing that, just simply go to an airport and look around, and you'll see that you may be the only person literally within a mile that actually exercises, and the place is packed. You can see it at a sports event. The only person that's healthy there, the athletes and you. But game is even smaller than people who exercise. We're an even smaller subset of the population. I think in general, the numbers and the numbers are kind of like decreasing as far as like age of live birth. I think it will almost always stay. And 86% of women by the age of 40 have a live birth. I don't think it's going to change. There's a little bit of lag right now, but most women when they hit 35, it's like a fucking alarm goes off in their head. And be it conscious or unconscious, they start looking for someone to settle down with so they can follow the blueprint. Remember the girl blueprint: boyfriend, engagement, wedding, house, babies. The babies is the reason that all the other shit happens. And so all these girls that are like, oh, I like being single, I'm a dog mom. at about 35, and you can talk to anyone older than 35 that's lived through this, it's like an alarm goes off internally. And then for the next 5 to 6 years, maybe 7, they are on the hunt. And not all, but the ones that are left, without children at 35, an alarm starts ringing and they get on the ball and they are not messing around. And that's the real deal. I think that the birth rate will always remain, about 86% of women. That has not changed ever. That's always been constant. And of that 14% that don't have children, a large percentage of them wanted to have children, but were unable to. Be it physically, circumstantially, they had an illness that required they become sterile, or they just tried and it just didn't happen. It wasn't in the cards. So an even smaller percentage don't want kids, but a lot of these guys are really like banging the drum about women not wanting children. And it's simply, there's a lag. I'm like, wait, give it time. You're going to see the numbers all average out. There may be a little bit less marriage because I think people are okay. I mean, you go to like Europe, a hard written marriage isn't that much of a priority as it is in the US. That may back down a little bit, but as far as like people getting together, I think those numbers will always stay constant. That's just my opinion. There's always more women for guys willing to run game. You will always have an abundance. Should you decide to run game, should you become good at running game, you will always have an abundance of women. That's not even negotiable. And it's not even a question. So that's my answer, Christy. And I appreciate your question that in the next few decades, will there be a large amount of guys checking out? I don't think it will be that big of a swing. More women for the guys willing to run it. There's always women available for men who run game if they're in a somewhat medium to large city. You will never run out of women. Within a 5-mile radius, there's more women than you could ever, that would willingly fuck you today. Enthusiastically, you will never be able to get to all of them, and they're only within a 5-mile radius. So that's once you know how to run this and what to do and how to move a girl from stranger to naked and in your bed. It's like a magic trick for a lot of people. They don't believe it's possible. And then, you show up with a new girl every week or two, they start believing in magic. So that is a real deal. Let's see what else we have on the timeline. I talk about this because there's a lot of boring women out there, and a lot of times guys blame themselves. Men interact with boring, unengaged girls under 2 circumstances. 1, men blame themselves for her lack of engagement. If I were just a little bit more interesting, maybe she'd be interested in me. And 2, believing all girls are as interesting, bright, and engaging as the brightest, most engaged girls they've met. The cure being experience, realizing girls have to be sorted out for their inherent qualities. Men, serious question, who put up with this? The reward worth the torture is not life more. So again, Titus was asking basically, when you're dragging girls through these like one answer, she gives one word response. And I saw that because I used an example of a text exchange yesterday. And it's funny because a couple guys that should know better jumped in and said, this girl's just not interested in you. You might as well just move on. She's just not interested. You're not that interesting. At this level of game, if you're even somewhat of a beginner, intermediate, advanced, you're far more interesting than the average guy. And you cannot blame yourself for any girls that are not interested in you, because 99% of them, there's something wrong with them. And you have to remember, the vast majority, if you just look at the numbers, most women are boring. Most women can't engage in a conversation. You can. You are actually interesting. You have a history of being interesting. Men continue to interact with unengaged girls. They blame themselves for lack of engagement. And that's where these guys that should know better jump in and go, she's just not that interested in you, man. It's just like, that's impossible. It's not you. you couldn't be more interesting. That's been proven by your track record. Men that blame themselves, if I were just a little bit more interesting, she'd be interesting in me. And that starts causing problems with game because you start running your script, you start asking the same questions that you've always asked, but she's not engaged. Guys will start going, well, what should I change? What is it about me? And all it is this girl's like, been pumped and dumped so many times, her brain is numb and she's full of SSRIs. So she can't actually have any emotional reaction. She can't even have an orgasm because she's so drugged up. So it's not you, it's her. Anytime you deal with one, especially in the general populations, it's her. It's not you. You have skills, you have interest. Other women are interested in you, and you have a track record of success. It's not you, it's her. And you should not be changing anything about your game if you've had success in the past and it worked. 2 is believing all girls are as interesting, bright, and engaging as the brightest, most engaged girls you've met. It's like Bunny is high energy. She's extroverted. She hits the ground running every day of her life. And you start thinking all women are like that. When most women can't put one foot in front of the other, they can't drive, they can't start a business, or they can't do anything. I mean, even Bunny's like an outlier as far as I've seen her start businesses with no backing of a man or guidance or anything. And I've only seen 2 women in my lifetime do that ever, completely unassisted. But most women won't. Most women can't. Most women absolutely do not have the interest or the ability or the wherewithal to do anything on their own, much less launch a business that makes money. So you have to kind of like tab back and realize most women, the vast majority, are boring, unengaged, not someone you'd want to be talking to anyway, and kind of a waste of your time. That way, when there is someone of interest, she'll actually trip your alarm. You'll be aware and you can engage with her. But the cure is experience. Once you deal with enough women, and that's especially that number 1, if you've got a system and you've seen it work 3, 4, 5 times, that's all you need. You have a system that works, and you should be improving upon that system. And any girl that doesn't jump in and is not a yes girl and doesn't get on board with your program, she can get the fuck out, because you have a system that works, and it's not you, it's her. And any dude that runs along and comes in and into the conversation says, she's just not that interested. It's not her. I mean, it's not you, man. It ain't you. It's her. The drugs, rode too many dicks, she has a bad picker. She doesn't know a quality guy to save her life, and you see it all the time. It's not you. Don't change your program. Don't change your plan. Don't change what you're doing. Just move on to the next girl. And then you'll forget. You'll forget because your system's working. It'll work on the next girl. So, and believing all girls are interesting, not a chance. Most girls are not. It's the exception. It's the anomaly that they're engaging and they're fun and interesting. And so I think that's going to be it for today. We're at 38 minutes on this Friday morning. Let me see if there's any other questions. In essay, you say how to get over betrayal in a committed relationship or marriage. That's that's a very large question and serious answer. And that's something that like Bunny and I would probably be best to like do a segment on. And I appreciate your question. I never want to ignore anyone's question, but I do the seriousness of that. And you can't, I wouldn't want to ever answer that incompletely or flippantly or off the cuff. It'd be something I'd especially want Bunny in here because she gives so much insight into this, and it's so serious because that's a lot going on in one place. And done right, you can recover relatively quickly because it's a very common thing. Being betrayed is not uncommon, unfortunately. And I appreciate your question. That's something that we will get to. And like I said, I don't think the birth rate or anything like that is going to change long term. You'll always have 86% of women are having children by the age of 40. And you always have 14% that are either not interested, child-free by choice, or they tried and it just didn't work out. But it's very rare. You have to realize that a lot of these girls at before 30, when they go, I don't want kids, you don't say out loud you're going to change your mind. But if you stick around and keep an eye on them, they're going to change their mind. Most girls will have a kid by the age of 40, and some either by accident or intent, one way or the other. So if you guys like this video, should subscribe, share. Let us know what you think in the comments, what you think of the subject, what you think of our approach to this, what's working for you on the ground, exchange of ideas. And if you like this channel, support us financially and some of the products at fortworthplayboy.gumroad.com. And right now I'm really seeing a lot of good results coming from Take the Dating World by Storm. It's a compiled wisdom about attraction, seduction, and sex by Chateau Hartiste. Brother, it doesn't get any better than that. And I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great day.